Hello, good afternoon, colleagues. I can see that we are still a few people on the call. I think we'll give it about 5 minutes before we can kick off with the presentation. So just let's aim to start at around 7 minutes past 3. Join us. So welcome to this first seminar for the authors who will be writing working papers for this project that is focusing on the 2020, 2025, 2026 electoral cycle. And as you know, this is a process that we would like to kick off with these seminars for the working papers that we shall be developing. So for those who don't know me, my name is Richard Sewachirianga. I'm a senior research fellow at the Center for Basic Research, but also the executive director at the center. So what we would like to do now is really to start the seminar series. But I think before I start, let me say something about how we got to this point. I think we realized that with the changes that we had in terms of the development partner, participation in this work, we have had confirmation that we will be able to get financing for a book, but then that hasn't been able to come through. But at least we are able to have some little investment that will go into developing some working papers. So we thought that instead of losing momentum, let's start by making sure that each of the authors produces a working paper, and we will then start fundraising for those working papers to be published into a full book sometime next year. But at least for now, we would like to make sure that the working papers that we publish will be published at CBR, and they will be at a very high quality that will allow them to easily be transited into a book chapter. The other important thing is, of course, as Professor Ikire reminded us recently, one of the reviews that came through from the last book that we published on elections, Controlling Consent, if you have seen that book, was that did a lot of analysis but wasn't sufficiently grounded in the empirical analysis of the elections itself at that time. So really what we are trying to get to this time round is to make sure that the kind of analysis that is done by the authors is rooted and is firmly grounded in the actual electoral process itself. That's why we decided that this process really should not wait for the elections to end and then we start a book process, but that we should actually do this as the events unfold. It may be something that some people find complicated, but at least the value addition of that is that it will help us to really ensure that whatever analysis we do is analysis that is grounded in the evolution of the electrocycle processes and developments. I won't go into a lot in terms of the background. You've seen the concepts that we have shared before, but we believe that this election is certainly a high-stakes election, and it would be important for us to have some knowledge product that actually engages with this electoral process. And so we feel that this is a huge opportunity, and we shall use whatever resources, whatever energy we have available to make sure that at least we have a knowledge product that comes out of this electoral process. So with that, I want to really thank our colleague Elvin Tulivamwe, who has agreed to take the first slot. What we intend to do is we shall be having seminars, at least for the next few weeks, that will bring together all the authors. For this slot, we have one. Maybe for the others, we were having 2 or 3 signing up. We intend to keep this to about, if it was 2 or 3 authors, it would be like 1.5 to 2 hours. But I think for this one, since it is a start, we can keep it to about an hour. In terms of the housekeeping rules, if you join, please make sure that you rename yourself so that we have a name of the person who is behind the screen or is behind the Zoom connection, so that we make sure that we know who is who. But other than that, keep yourselves muted so that we do not have any background sounds. We will, when I finish talking, we'll keep quiet and give the author a maximum of 20 minutes to really take us through what we asked for, which was an extended abstract of this work. And then after that, we'll just have comments from all of you who have joined. And then based on those comments, we shall then summarize, and that will be the first set of comments that the author can use to improve the product that they are working on. So with that, I want to thank all of you who have joined. And at this point, let me invite the author to go ahead and make his presentation. And let's give it 20 minutes, so up to 3:35. And then after that, we shall get comments from all of you. And then we conclude our first seminar. So welcome, and over to you, Elvin. Elvin, if you are talking, we can't hear you. But if you are not talking, then hopefully you'll start talking soon. But also, yeah, it would be good for a start, if you can, to show your face so that people know the person who is speaking, and then after that, you can turn off your camera. But we can't hear you, but I see you are unmuted. Please check your connection, and then you continue. Are you having technical problems? Because I see you're unmuted and we can't hear you. And maybe the lesson from this is for us to first check the presenter's connection before we kick off. So next time we shall do that. So apologies for the people who have joined. But Elvin, please check your connection, or alternatively, you can sign out and sign in one more time. Sometimes that helps to fix any glitches. So we'll give him a couple of minutes. It looks like he needs to try and fix the connection. Right. Is it working for you? No, not yet. We can see you have rejoined, but we can't still hear you. Um, so he hadn't planned for this glitch. So we'll just have to give him a few minutes to work through it. Maybe he needs to change the computer. But in the meantime, the person behind Dell, if you can rename yourself, that would help. So we know who is online.
Hello.
Yes, now we can hear you.
All right. So sorry about that hiccup. Um,
Mm.
Good afternoon once again, Mr. Richard and everyone on call.
But,
I just turned on my camera just to put face to the name, and then I can proceed. So thank you so much for that debrief, Mr. Richard. My name is Elvin Tulibamwe, like you mentioned. I am a strategic communication specialist by practice, um, but I have a background in education, English and literature to be specific. Um, Even with that background, I have a leg in advocacy and policy. I've done a bit of work with a number of CSOs like Action Aid, Youthline Forum, and the Center for Policy Analysis. In the last general elections, 2021, I published something around meaningful youth participation in political processes ahead of that election. Um, a publication that highlighted actionable strategies for fostering youth engagement in electoral processes. That speaks to how passionate I am about young people and also their involvement in civic action, especially election processes like these, policy, and and engaging in societal activities, especially those that have to do with politics. So I am very excited for this project, and the working paper I'll be working on is titled Youth Dynamics and the 2026 Elections. Um, I understand we did an abstract earlier on, but what I'll be speaking through this afternoon is an extended abstract that speaks to the entire direction I am taking as an author for this particular working paper or chapter later on, if it's going to be published into a book. So allow me start, and I will share my screen, if that's okay, and I'll read verbatim some of these things that I have put down. So allow me share my screen, and somebody can confirm if my screen is visible on your end.
Yes, it is visible.
All right. So like I said, I want to put my emphasis on young people and youth dynamics and the election that we are looking forward to. Specifically around crafting youth-centric campaigns and the role of strategic communications for political engagement and policy advocacy in Uganda ahead of the election. This write-up or this work is informed by the demographic realities of our country, our continent, and the world at large, really. We all know that Uganda largely is currently populated by young people of 30 years and below. And of course, that has a huge influence on all democratic processes of the country, really. And the 2026 general election is not in isolation. So I'll try to read verbatim these things. And what I'm saying is Uganda's 2026 elections comes at a moment when the country's demographic profile and communication environment together create both an opportunity and a challenge for democratic contestation, with predominantly over 73% under the age of 30. Youth perspectives and behavior will be very central in the electoral dynamic that we are headed for. So this extended abstract argues that strategic, issue-based, participatory, and ethically governed communication is essential to mobilize young people not only to vote, but also shape policy agendas. Things like what politicians speak about in their campaigns will be largely shaped by this demographic reality. Um, this chapter wants to use qualitative case studies, media content analysis, and interviews with youth activists and communicators. One, to map the communication ecosystem that matter to different young people. And second, to evaluate the role of digital platforms and popular culture in shaping youth political engagement. And three, identifying the digital and structural risks that inhibit meaningful participation. And then four, propose ethical and regulatory recommendation for youth-centric campaigns. These four will largely shape this working paper. And just to provide context and rationale of this particular work. One is the demographic reality, like I said, but also to foreground the fact that this demographic profile constitutes a potential demographic dividend, but also highlights the scale of utmost socioeconomic needs among young people that elections can either address or ignore. So the idea is to benchmark on the last election to inform what to expect in the 2026 general election, some of which we have started seeing these realities like we saw them again in the previous election. The 2021 electoral cycle illustrated how youth mobilization can reshape political discourse in a country like Uganda. And the best example we can refer to, or the best reference we have, is the fact that a music artist turned politician galvanized attention and support among young urban and peri-urban voters, demonstrating the political potence of culturally embedded communication strategies. At the same time, the 2021 cycle also revealed the limits and vulnerabilities of digital political engagements, including internet restrictions and information control that complicate efforts to reach and organize young people, especially online. So even with the realities of the communication landscape, what the last election taught us is that there can be limitations to these. For example, from the last election, I think up to now, Facebook in Uganda is still not a platform you can easily access. So what do such limitations mean as we go into the next general election? In the last 5 years, we've had platforms like TikTok blow up. What do we expect? Do we expect another kind of shutdown to platforms like those, where young people are aggressively expressing their sentiments? So these are things, this work will be very, very deliberate at looking at. So this chapter will situate the 2026 electoral moment in the dual light, one of potential for meaningful youth influence, and the other about the significant institutional and technological barriers that require strategic responses for stakeholders, especially those that are actively going to be engaged in the election. Beyond that, this work will also benchmark, like I said, on very many case studies. So there will be a lot of literature to review, and also a number of conceptual frameworks to benchmark on. Uh, Largely, I want to build on literature around political communication, that is in terms of messaging, framing, and media effects. And then two, youth mobilization and social movement studies. And then the other, participatory communication, which speaks to audience co-creation and agency. So I will not go into these theories and frameworks given the time we have, but we will by means of this work try to bring in a comparative element. Compare our context with elsewhere in Africa. And I like to refer to Nigeria's NSAS protests and the most recent Kenya protests that we've seen, because all of these that I've cited were heavily driven by young people. And in both of these, we cannot undermine the power of digital communication, you know. So we want to compare our contexts with these occurrences elsewhere in Africa to help us understand or probe this very carefully. So conceptually, the chapter uses a framing and mediation approach. It examines the frames, for example, issues, identity, grievance, and aspirational, used in youth-oriented political messages, and the mediating role of platforms and culture forms in amplifying or suppressing these frames. It also integrates digital inclusion lenses that foregrounds who is reached by online campaigns and who remains marginalized. Of course, notably the rural youth and those without reliable internet access. So even when we know about realities like the digital age, in the context of Uganda, we cannot rule out the limitations that come with that digital age. For example, there's very many young people out there who do not have as much access to the internet, like the urban youth, for example, and also the question of affordability. And all of these inform how politicians will run their campaigns or how they'll put across their messages. Yeah. So these are issues we want to, by means of this paper, look into. Then like Mr. Richard said, we want to be very empirical in our assertions in this work. And I have cited some key empirical features that are going to shape the arguments I'll be advancing in this paper. The first one is demographics and socioeconomic context, like I mentioned, the realities of the demographics of our country, and then also the socioeconomic context of these young people, because um, whereas we have young people taking up the biggest share of our population, we also have the realities of youth unemployment, you know, um, then and also what the unemployment and the socioeconomic realities that young people face mean towards an election like this, because then they will dictate what kind of messaging the politicians will be putting across and how they will do it. Then the other, like I also said, is the digital access and social media use. Speaking about how many young people can easily access social media, and even when they can access it, how well can they use it? Yeah, we have seen in the past young people come off as very, very reckless in the way they put across their views and sentiments online, in a very politically charged environment like we are going into. What does this mean to the electoral process that we are yet to experience? But then the other is the digital repression and information risk. And like I said, benchmarking from the last election, there's a lot of clamping down on most of these platforms. And of course, young people somehow find a way. That's when we saw the realities of things like VPN come into play. But still, the limitations are very visible. And some of these realities from the past elections are going to inform how young people participate in the forthcoming election, and also how politicians and those that are going to be actively engaged can prepare for the times ahead. Methodologically, how am I going to concretize these arguments? Since this is going to be very qualitative, case selection is going to be very important. The empirical core will comprise Uganda's 2021 cycle, like I've been referring to, um, and also heavily relying on the people power phenomenon, the Bobby Wine, the Bobby Wine Brigade, a musician turned artist, and how he was able to galvanize the support of young people, largely because he was very flexible with digital channels, and his messaging was very relatable to young people. So that's a case study that we want to be very keen about, because Bobby Wine is still here in this election, and not a lot has changed about his messaging style. And also, the other reality is that he has drawn very many young people to the political scene. If you look at, for example, the recently scenarios that we want to probe into carefully, but and the recent youth protests in Kenya. But the other will be content analysis. I will assemble a number of campaign messages from the past and what's being used currently. These messages will be coded for frame type, messenger profile, modality, and engagement signals to try and understand um, what kind of message and what direction is this political season taking. The other will be interviews. I want to speak to youth activists, especially those that are actively politically charged and engaged in these processes. What do these campaigns mean to them? What messaging appeals to them? Um, How do they want to be reached at? Are they for issue-based messaging or for individual-centered kind of mobilization? Yeah. The other will be the triangulation and ethics. Findings will be triangulated across media content, interviews, and secondary data. Ethical clearance protocols, anonymizing interviews, and securing informed consent, especially where political sensitivity or digital surveillance risks are present. Moving away from that, what will I analyze and why? I want to analyze framing and resonance. Yeah. Which frames, for example, jobs, corruption, identity, and aspiration. Most effectively, things that motivate youth engagement. How do frames vary across the urban and the rural and then the socio-economic segments? I will test the hypothesis that issue-based frames, for example, jobs, education, and service delivery, yield more sustainable policy engagement than personality-centered appeals alone. And the trend has been, I think, from the last general election that young people have picked keen interest about issues as well. So initially, they never used to be involved. Then, upon being dragged into involvement, it used to be centered around personalities. But now we've realized a wave of young people who are actually interested in the issues that are being advanced by the different politicians or the policy that can result from, political engagement and things of the sort. So that's something I want to keenly analyze. Then the other is the channels and mediators. How do platform dynamics and culture forms, for example, music, film, and art influence dissemination and reception? Which combinations of digital and offline channels achieve the widest and deepest engagement among diverse youth groups? And you will realize again by this that in most cases a blended approach will suffice. A blended approach of both digital and traditional and on ground engagement in will mostly suffice because you have young people in rural areas who are not abreast with social media, So sometimes you want uh, to reach physically to them, but also the influence of culture forms, things like music, things like art and film, and also how they will influence the involvement of government. Shall we see government coming in to regulate, for example, artists and these creatives? We see comedians these days blend a lot of political messaging in their comedy towards the election. What are the steps that the regulators, what steps are they going to take, for example? Then the other is the risks and exclusion. I spoke about um, the 2021 general elections and what happened with the internet shutdowns and everything. What are the systemic and technological obstacles that constrain effective youth participation? How do campaigns mitigate these risks while maintaining ethical and legal standards? So I want to deeply probe these three areas to try and give this work some shape. So these pillars will allow the chapter to connect micro-level communication choices to macro-level outcomes. And the micro level communication choices being things like message wording and then messenger selection, and the macro level outcomes being things like policy and then discursive change. This is a little about the anticipated findings and illustrated examples. I'll not read this verbatim, but I'll speak about the ethical, legal, and policy recommendations. This chapter will conclude with a set of recommendations for campaigners, for civil society, and for policy actors. The first, to adopt issue-first messaging, then also to design hybrid outreach models, like I said, a blended approach of both digital and traditional, and then to implement ethical data practices, and then 4, to advocate for regulatory safeguards. And then I also want to speak to the contribution to scholarship and practice, because I believe that's very, very important. This chapter will contribute in 3 ways. One, it will advance theory by integrating framing and participatory communication approaches with a digital inclusion lens tailored to African youth electorates. Then 2, it will supply empirical grounded lessons from Uganda and comparable to regional cases to guide practitioners in designing inclusive campaigns. And then 3, it will propose concrete ethical and regulatory interventions to protect young people in regards to their political participation. So the combination of theory, empirical case material, and policy recommendation makes the chapter suitable for both academic audiences and practitioners in the political world, in civil society, government, and communicators as well. So my working paper will be structured in these formats. We'll have introduction and research questions, then the literature review and conceptual framing, then a bit of background in regards to demographics and digital landscape, the methodology and case selection. Then we will heavily rely on the case study of the past general election in Uganda, and then comparative cases, that's Nigeria NSAS and the Kenya youth protests, and then analysis, and then ethical and regulatory considerations, and then policy and practice recommendations. By and large, that is going to be the content of the working paper and the flow, but also maybe to speak about the limitations and risks. This study will heavily rely on qualitative data and case comparisons. It therefore emphasizes depth over immediate generalizability. Rapid changes in the digital environment, for example, platforms could be shut down, as we advance towards the elections, which may alter campaign conditions. Then the chapter mitigates this by combining historical casework with contemporary monitoring of the 2026 developments as we see them. But finally, the political sensitivity and safety considerations may also limit the scope of on-ground observation in certain areas. So ethical research design and anonymization will govern fieldwork to manage some of these risks. So that is pretty much it. I think I have used slightly more than 20 minutes, but I have tried uh, to go over the extended abstract and also show direction of what I will be doing with the paper that I'll be working on. So back to you, Mr. Richard.
First of all, we want to thank you very much for this presentation. I don't know, did you share a copy of this with us? Because I think we had the earlier version.
Yeah, I
You
think
did
you
share?
you have the shorter version of the
Okay, we
abstract.
have them.
Yeah.
Okay, so please do share so that we can have another look and probably, where possible, give some written comments. So thank you very much. What we would now intend to do is to take a round of comments from those who have had you. I have mine, but I think I'll wait to hear from others, and then we can take it from there. As I said before, if you are on and you are listening and you are not named by name on your screen, please put your name there so we know. So we don't call you Dell when we want to ask you to speak, or MT023, because those are not names that, Okay, let's do that. Thank you. Anybody who has some comments? Are there no comments? That would be very strange. Never seen it in a research environment. Yes, Rugendo, please go ahead.
Thank you, Doctor, and all the rest of the members. I have very few comments. Thank you, Elvin, for a wonderful eye-opener for most of us, especially who are in this environment for the first time. My name is Aronito Rugendo. I'm actually a doctoral student currently, and trying to cut my teeth in the research terrain. There's, for me, I've seen a few things that have confused me a little bit, especially in your methodology. When you talk about testing hypothesis, then qualitative study, I got confused there. It's as if you're trying to go mixed methods. Maybe you may need to look into that and see which approach fits this kind of study, which I really see tending towards purely qualitative. Maybe the senior researchers might have something on this as well to try and flesh it out for you. Then I also got a bit worried when you say when you start mentioning about anticipated results when actually you've not gone to the field, we've not collected data.
We can't hear you, Rugendo. I don't know if
I don't know
anything.
Probably. Can you hear me now?
Much better, I think.
Can other people hear us?
Can other people hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know where I'd reached,
Okay.
but
Rugendo could have had an issue. Is there any other comments, colleagues?
Yeah, I think
we are going round, doing it to the term, and hear from people.
Hello, Richard.
Please
Mr.
know
Richard?
that research seminars are like wedding meetings. You have to contribute, because when your own comes, you want people to contribute. So take that as a hint that when you come for a seminar like this, say something, because you don't want people to just keep quiet in your own seminar. Rugendo, when you rejoin, I think you can talk again. But anybody else who wants to say something?
Yes.
Ivan, I see you are talking, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, we can't hear you.
What about now?
I can hear you. I don't know whether you can hear me.
I can also hear Ivan. I don't know.
Dale, who can you hear? You can hear Rugendo?
Can you hear me? I think I need to shout.
Okay.
I can hear everybody.
Then it must be my own
Possibly,
system
it must be your settings.
Okay. Yeah.
Elvin, do we continue?
I'm not sure. Has Richard fallen off?
Please continue because I don't know what happened. I can't hear you on my laptop, but I've moved to another gadget.
Also, I think we can proceed.
Please go ahead.
Yes, this is Ivan. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So, Elvin, thank you very much for the journey so far. My comments are just on some content that you want to undertake. Maybe see how you can reorganize them. Um, First of all, I wanted you to correct the demographic. We normally make a lot of mistakes with the youth demographic. I see you have a 73%. I don't know if that's the one that you have. I think the youth demographic, according to the,
Okay. Okay.
can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah,
Please go
I
As a
ahead.
can.
team, we can.
Yes, I just wanted to you to correct the demographic to the 18 to 30 because when you talk about youth, then you're talking about the 18 to 30 who constitute about the 22.7% in a round of about 23%. So, but also within the content, um, would you be mindful if you wanted to look at how, for example, the youth disengagement in the actual election and their engagement in the post-election is playing out? Because when you look at when you review, for example, the Global Youth Participation Index, it's a framework under the European Partnership for Democracy. It highlights that there's complete disconnect with young people's voting, but again, also brings into context their engagement in the post election. So you see completely, for example, you have highlighted very well with the Kenyan protest. And we know, for example, there was a little bit of low turnout still in Kenya during the Ruto election. And but now we see the engagement in the post-election. So how would that be able to play out? Because for me, it finds it very, very interesting dynamic that you would want to basically look out for. On the other comment that I would be very interested is how you bring in the aspect of the digital space. Um, for example, when you look at the digital space right now, whatever is happening, for example, on TikTok, is it activism? Is it mobilization? Because if we find that there's a lot of activism going on and not mobilization, that means then there's something we're losing out uh, uh, from how we can leverage a space like that one to engage with the young people using the digital space and the digital tools, either with information on issues, either with information about their political parties or whatever engagement that they definitely will be interested in, but in a more very creative format that young people resonate with. On the aspect that you also want to look out for is a political party is first of all interested uh, in the young people uh, as key stakeholders, or they're just interested in them as what someone would highlight uh, as items, especially in this kind of environment, because we increasingly see that there's lesser engagement in meaningful platforms for young people within the various political parties. But when we come to times like these, everyone wants to look at the youth numbers as though it is very important. I want to thank you. Those are my comments for.
Thanks a lot, Ivan. That's very helpful. Any other comments? We will be closing this call at about 4:15, just so that because of the time we lost. Would have been closing in 2 minutes, but we lost about 10 minutes. So we'll just bear with us. So we shall do that. So we'll take a few more comments and then wrap up at 4:15. Any comments? Okay, so if there are no additional comments, I wanted to just offer mine, and then we give the author a chance to summarize what he sees, what he thinks about what everyone has said, and then we take it from there. Rugendo, is that a hand up again?
Yes, it's up. I don't know whether you can hear me now.
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to add one little small thing. I hope my brother heard what I had said before. But now my other confusion comes from the scope. I don't know whether he's teasing out advocacy or communication or agitation. We probably may need to narrow down a bit so that then the direction of the study becomes more clear. And the last one, I think, goes to you as you close these first sessions, which I think most of us are trying to learn from, people to prepare better ahead of time, is whether this good first example is a very good direction for all of us to be taking in terms of extended abstracts. Thank you.
Okay, so any other comments? Josephine is part of the editorial team. So Josephine, do you want to say anything, Professor Ichire, in terms of what you've heard so far? If you do, please, you have the floor. Okay, I'm not sure if she's behind the thing or not. But first of all, yes, thank you very much, Elvin, for giving us this first shot. And certainly this is just an extended abstract. So we can only give comments. Some of them would be general, but others would be also will become specific as we go along. What we think is more plausible, and I'll talk about the next steps. We shall look through how we can take this process forward. But I think for me, in terms of comments on the specific extended abstract, I wish we had seen it before. So we are going to send out an email and encourage the authors to share the abstract a couple of days before, so we can share it around with all the other authors, and we have them read through so that the comments that they make now are anchored in something much more robust. Secondly, I think for me, yes, this is an interesting topic, but I would say that you will need to sharpen the focus, and I think this has been also mentioned by Rugendo, which is to say that it would be good to have a specific, a core argument that you are making in the paper. I think the paper speaks about a number of things. It speaks about the communication-related elements. It talks about actual activism. I think also somebody else talked about the fact that it talks about a number of areas. So I think you need to make a decision on exactly what is the core argument of the paper. If it is talking about youth and the electoral process, what is it that you want to argue? Youth and elections and communication, what is the argument? What do we want to learn from that empirical formulation? So that's key, because from the extended abstract, you say many things, and some of them, you know, are not always clear to the reader if you have a specific argument that you are making. So, for example, if you are not reading this, can you tell us in a couple of sentences what is it that you are arguing in this paper? So that needs to come out. And of course, when you do that, then I think we can get into other areas, like what kind of theoretical anchoring is the paper going to be based on? Is it in the political theory kind of communication theory? What is it? Where is it anchoring its theoretical basis in the whole body of literature on youth and elections and communications? So that would be another important thing. But also the other thing, which I think is important to also deal with, is that it's important for you to help the listener, the readers know what is it that you are going to work with. Are you going to, is this a qualitative kind of study? And if it is a qualitative kind of study, it would be good to know exactly what is it that you are going to do. So, because the way you are framing it, it looks like it's a survey and then it's qualitative. So if you do mixed methods, of course, that is permissible, but again, the argument has to be clear. What elements are you going to use quantitative methods on? What elements are you going to use qualitative methods on? So that's an important part of this that you need to also invest time in. So to do a bit of that will be helpful so that the paper is tighter. And also I think it's important to note that what our preferences are is to have a paper that focuses on this election, the 2026 election. We have a book already out that looked at the 2016, not a lot in the 2021. We don't have a book on that one, but it would be good for this to be about this election. So I see that, for example, you have other elections that you are talking about another election, but if indeed that you go that direction, there has to be clarity why you return to that path and not focus on this one. I see that you are also doing some kind of continental comparison. But the continental comparison, while it's important and it's useful, it's also one of those elements that yeah, they are good, but they should be strengthening the Ugandan message of the election in Uganda. Yes, it's okay to compare, but in a manner that helps us to strengthen the argument you're making in the paper. So I guess that those for me would be some of the areas. Yes, it's a good, but also what I saw from the extended abstract that you showed, and we have to apologize that we are dealing with something we hadn't read very carefully, is when I hear you talk and I looked at the title, it wasn't clear if the connection was a little bit loose. And so that could be helpful. Because you are doing a book title, yes, it's good to think about the recommendations now, but sometimes it is also good for the recommendations to drive the data, the findings to drive the recommendations. So don't have any anticipatory recommendation and then you walk backwards. But I think it's better that the data you collect, the information that you analyze, is the best on that is where you could do some recommendation. And again, with recommendations, we always have to be very cautious, especially in these kinds of writings, so that we recommend things that are essentially in a scope of the paper and not give very grandstanding recommendations that may be too large to be derived from the paper. So I think what we are doing is we are recording this, so we shall give you a recording of this seminar in terms of the actual comments and the discussions we've had, and then we'll agree on how to take it forward. It would be good for you to send in the extended abstract revised with these comments, and then that's what we shall pass on to the editorial team to look at, and then probably give you comments that you can now use in starting to develop the actual piece of work that you are going to be doing. So that's how we envisage things. In terms of next steps, again, we encourage you, while you have presented now, to come to the next session and listen to others, because that also gives you a good chance to hear what the others are talking about. So I think that's where we are, and I think that's what I can say for now. So yes, we shall update the seminar program, and my colleague Jordan will share it with all of you, so you know who is going to do this. Yeah, when we receive the extended note, I think that you can share. The one you revise, you can share with us, and then you can share with the editorial team so they can give you some really concrete comments that you can use in writing. So that's one of the concrete steps. Next week, we shall have another seminar, and we hope that, again, colleagues can make it, and we have this chance to continue to engage in these questions a bit more concretely. Then lastly is to thank all of you for having made the time to be here. We agreed that we shall spend about an hour. I've spent about 1 hour and a few minutes, but we have also had an interesting paper on youth and elections. I should say that we did support at the Center for Basic Research the Open Space Center, which is a youth organization, to do an empirical study in, I can't remember if it was 7 districts or 8, on youth and elections. The publication is available at CBR and also at Open Space Center. We are happy to share that with you so that you can see what we collected in terms of the voices of young people and all the things. Of course, it was covering other issues on youth and elections, but not specifically issues around communication. Having said that, we want to thank all of you very much, and we look forward to engaging again when we have a chance within the next week. So next Friday, Thursday, we have also a schedule where we shall be listening to a couple of people who will be speaking to us. So with that, I want to thank you very much and wish you a very good evening. But we had agreed that maybe Elvin, we shall give you the last 2 minutes to just say 1 or 2 things before we sign out. So over to you, Elvin, for a couple of minutes.
Thank you so much, Richard, for that. I must say, being the first presenter always comes with a lot of expectations, and for me, this has been very fulfilling. One in helping me also sink into the reality of the work, but also I want to appreciate comments from colleagues Ivan and Rugendo and yourself, Richard. All of them were really, really spot on. And what stands out for me is narrowing down the scope. As you went on with the comments, I also felt from within that I need to narrow down the scope of the work and be more definitive on exactly what I want to probe, and that is much appreciated. And also, Ivan raised a number of very critical areas that I need to look at: the demographic, the statistics, and also especially the element of the disengaged young people during the election and their engagement post the election. I think that's something that is very, very interesting that I picked from Ivan. But to sum it up, really, I love the feedback. And like you said, Richard, I am going to factor this in and try to come up with a cleaner abstract that I will share with you and the team to advance to the other editors for feedback. But I want to appreciate your time and patience, and I'm excited for the other upcoming sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for opening up this process. And certainly we look forward to all of you giving us insights. This is always exciting to do some kind of knowledge production for ourselves as a country. I think it's something that is fulfilling. So thank you very much for that. And we'll see you next Thursday. Thank you.
Hello? I'm all right, and you? Yes. Mm, you want me to leave at 6? No, it's okay. It's okay. You come. Mm, mm, mm. Mm? Boda ho. Nasi muno. Mm. Okay. Mm. Mm. Nibabola ati ekyo kuba menda lukinga. Ekyo kuba musira mudu alire nda lukinga. Mm. Okay. Mm. Haba. Kulisa alala. Mm. Bano batekeresangaho hesyenyenya haba. Mm. Handi bakaluhaho kose basisiri. Endi ebyo adomadoma. Handi bamala bakaluhaho hoyo likose basisiri. Niyo hulomaloma nawe. Mm. Okay. Mm. 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 Okay.